Namaskar and welcome to this exciting new episode of Sattology Debunking Mythology. We have a great thinker and Muni and Rishi with us who is enlightening us for a long time now and is very popular in these circles. Today we are going to continue with the Yuga conundrums because most misunderstood topic and also the dating gets seriously affected. Understand that the Yugas is a cyclical time period and it's different than chronology, which is built on chronos, which is serial time, linear time. Now linear time you can always have within a day, but then the next day comes in again. You have to restart. The same time comes second, so there is no such thing as linear time. The time comes back again. Next day again you have 5 a.m, another day again 5 a.m, 6 p.m, sunset, sunrise. So without delay, let us welcome Shri Nilesh Nilkant Oak.
Namaskar, Aditya ji.
Namaskar.
Happy to be here talking about the yugas.
Yeah, so if one thing I noticed in the last few videos is that more people's doubts are removed, the layers are going off, the more questions are coming. Isn't that
Yes,
natural?
it is very natural. In fact, that tells us that we are on the right track. If you look at the process of darshana or process of science, they are similar. Science is bit reductionist, especially the modern science is bit reductionist, but it has made wonders, like in terms of science and technology and the gadgets that it has given us. But darshana, which means experiencing it, so like the principle like equal to mc square is like a science, but turning that into technology is like a taking a tattvajnan and turning it into darshan. Okay. And so even darshan also, what happens, like again, think of from a Vaishnava bhakti tradition, what we will hear if we try to know more and more about Krishna. As we know more, a endpoint never comes. It's like a Krishna expands. What more you can know about Krishna. It is exactly the same, because this is nothing but Krishna's expansion. The whole universe that we are seeing is Krishna's expansion. So more we know, more things that open up, and so that is the process of science too. In fact, what we say is, when we make a revolution in science, like we make a revolutionary discovery, like Arundhati, Vasishta, Bhishma, Nirvana, and many others, Ramayana timing, Rigveda timing, Saraswati research. It doesn't, I mean, it does answer that one question for which we did the research. But if it is revolutionary in nature, it leads to many more questions of higher complexity. So when you are saying after the Yuga, many questions are being answered, but there are many more questions coming. That is a right thing. That means we know we are on the right track, and we are just covered actually one part. So there is much more to come.
Yeah, and I think the more questions you have in this session, if you see, many of those questions will be automatically answered, and that's why we purposely did not answer on the YouTube channel, because the next topic is coming. And when the house is very dirty, when you start brooming it, more dust looks like there's more dust in the house, but actually that's
Yes,
the process of cleaning.
correct.
And the same process applies to the heart as well. So when you start understanding more, you naturally have more questions, more doubts.
Yes.
So without delay, let's get started there. One thing I must tell you, it's called Yuga. It's
Hmm.
not Yuja. It's Uga, but we're pronouncing a Yug. Yug. Okay?
Hmm. Yeah.
Yuga.
Yeah. Yeah. And the huge pratyay is also there. I mean,
Yes.
it in a sense of a connecting. In
Correct.
that case, the you is also. I mean, they're closer. They are
Close.
closer in terms of with their original meaning. So
Yeah.
yeah. So do you want me to start sharing?
Yes, please, please. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. Okay. Do let me know when you see it. All right.
Yeah, I
Okay.
can see that.
So in this Yuga series, we have done now two parts, and today is our part number 3. Okay, so Yuga Prakarana, we are focusing ourselves on understanding Yuga, different definitions of Yuga, also understanding the common part, which is Yuga as a specific amount of time, a specific interval of time, and it is bounded in some fashion. There is a start and there is a stop. That is not to say that the duration is always constant. In fact, if there is a big takeaway that people should understand, that yoga does not have a very well defined specific interval, the specific time duration. It changes depending on the context. It changes depending on the person, whoever is using that yoga for whatever his or her purpose. So therefore we are going to see many different definitions, many different durations, and sometimes, frankly, it is experiential. It's like a darshana. Yoga is experiential. It is not in the sense of just the chronos that Aditya ji mentioned, not chronos in the sense of like a specific time. So with that, let's get into a quick summary of the last time. I will not go into all the details. If you remember,
I love the term
the
enchilada you write
problem,
over
yeah,
there. Enchilada is
the
good.
enchilada, yes. If you that's the enchilada is that problem, so that enchilada, let's use that term. The enchilada essentially is, when I define the timing of Mahabharat in 6 millennium BC, 5561 BC, time of Ramayana into 12,209 BC. Many people don't see a problem with the Mahabharata timing in the sense of a yuga. Okay, I mean, there is nothing that they can fight about it, and I want really people to come forward and critique it. Mostly, what I get is a absolutely idiotic arguments. Okay, they come from academia, they come from ordinary folks, they come from other Mahabharata researchers. But if there is anything that is wanting, that is intelligent critique, intelligent argument against my dates. But now, if we add the enchilada, if we add the sauce, let's say the cheese sauce of the one specific yuga definition out of hundreds of different definitions that we are going to go through, and we have already gone through some of them, then you find this problem is, if you assume that one dogmatic definition of yuga is the only definition, where Kali Yuga's length is 432,000 and Dwapar is twice that of that, so 864,000, then people start saying, so you are saying, based on Valmiki Ramayana evidence, that the Ramayana happened 14,000 years ago, but using this particular definition of yuga, it should have been at least a million year ago. Now, where is the problem? Well, the problem is with the yuga and not with the date of 12,209 BC, because that date is based on all internal evidence of Valmiki Ramayana, and not just little evidence here and there in a very uh, inductive fashion. In an extremely scientific fashion, we have extracted all the references, all the evidence, all the descriptions from Valmiki Ramayana, and solving like a jigsaw puzzle in a very scientific, mathematical, logical fashion. It's 12,209. So taking that one definition wrongfully of one specific yuga is what causes this enchilada. I'm just using as a problem. All right. So that's when I started this discussion. And so quickly, the framework that you have seen through the previous two portions, so I can go fast through it. So I use the x-axis of time, from a psychology, physiology time to a space-time, like in the sense of not exactly chronos, but a space-time. And I'll leave it at that for now, and for a reason, because the chronos is only the bottom right-hand corner. But then the vertical axis I use is the axis of applicability, and that goes from a local, contextual to global and universal. I can also give some additional names, and what that names actually do is that they give a flavor. They allow the viewers, they allow us to understand what that area belongs to, what is the emphasis of that area. So if you look at the left side of this applicability axis, that is the karma pradhan. The emphasis is on action. The emphasis is on the behavior. The emphasis is on the action. Action of what? Action of a intellect, action of a mind, action of a buddhi, action of your body. Okay, that's what it is. The left side, it is not any individual person's action, but it is the action that is happening, which is captured in some framework. One of the framework is that chronology, like a linear time that Aditya ji referred to. And the other one is also a linear slash pseudo cyclical time, or pseudo linear time. And when we get there, we will talk about it. So let me quickly fill this four quadrants. So there are different types of yoga: theoretical, chronological, philosophical, and practical. Vichar, achar, sanchar, prachar. Vichar is like related to the thought. Achar is related to the achar. So I should maybe add a additional a there. Achar. That's a action. That's a acharan. Okay, how you behave. The sanchar is essentially a tracking or communicating some complex concept we are trying to communicate or we are trying to track, such as say geological evolution, biological evolution, cosmological evolution. These are happening over the millions and billions of years of time frame. Okay, so we want to track it, we want to communicate about it in a language that people can understand. And then there is that chronological, the chronos type of Yuga, where we want to give a timeline, some kind of a calendrical system, so that we know what happened before which particular two events, which one happened first, what was the gap between those two events. And that is done through calendars, that is done through astronomy, positions of the stars, planets, comets, and so on. Okay, so those are the four categories. Now, last time, the previous episode, we went through the philosophical aspect. So the cultural evolution, Tattvajnan Darshan evolution, it can be the evolution of a language, like, Para, Pashyanti, Madhyama, Vaikhari, different types of language layers, moral health degradation, and Daivi Asuri Pravrutti. There, I went through three different illustrations. One was I told you the story of a Daivi Asuri Pravrutti in a metaphorical fashion, how it was in the Kruta Yuga, what happened in the Treta Yuga, what happened in the Dwapar Yuga, and how in the Kali Yuga, metaphorically speaking again, both the Daivi and Asuri Pravrutti are right inside every individual. Okay, now they were always there, but this is the metaphorical aspect of it. We also looked at references from Ayurveda, like how it defines when the human health or human conditioning was very perfect or close to perfect, ideal. That is a Kruta Yuga. Now, this has nothing to do with a chronos, nothing to do with a chronological time. And therefore, because of a time limitation, I didn't go into it, and nor I will go it today. But actually, after discussing the Ayurvedic global universal concept of a yuga as the best health as a Satya Yuga, Kruta Yuga, and then slight modification, slight degradation as a Treta, Dwapar, and so on. What is very interesting is that the Ayurvedic text like Charaka Samhita goes on to discuss what people can do to bring themselves into a specific yuga, which is to say, if you take care of your health, if you follow a dinacharya, your health may not be good. In that sense, you may be in a Dwapar Yuga or Kali Yuga, but you can bring yourselves back to Treta Yuga or Kruta Yuga. There are these discussions that I did not go into, but I hope this discussion encourages people who are watching it to actually go to the original Sushrut Samhita, original Charaka Samhita, and read through it and understand what is happening in the Ayurvedic concept. Now, let's go through the next portion, which is the bottom left hand corner. Again, we are in the area of a psychology, physiology, specifically achar, acharan, the behavior, action of a person, or behavior of a person that determines a certain type of a yuga. And here we are looking at a physiological evolution. Okay, for example, Bhagavad Gita talks about Denosmin yatha dehe kaumaryam yavanam jara tatha dehantarah praptir dhiras tatra namuhyati. For example, when Atma is proceeding through birth, and then in being infant, then youth, then adult, and then old person, and then finally decrepit and disease and maybe death, the person who understands the true nature of Atma is not perturbed. There is that physiological evolution of an individual lifetime that is also divided into four types of yuga. We are going to look at that today. Then there is a evolution of a self, evolution of a social, like a society at large. Okay, so we will also look at this. This, remember, this is a local or contextual, which means sometime like a certain time period, like say for example in the time period of say America's, okay, American life, and we will say like the Second World War time, that was like a World War II yuga. Okay, a specific time people had to change their lifestyle, people have to behave differently, and so on. We can take another time, like exciting times, everything is a prosperous, everyone is having a job, everyone is doing well, America is making progress, that can be like a Kennedy's time, for example. Like we can talk of that as another Yuga, and so on. Okay, and we will see specific illustrations of that too. And then there are many others, statecraft administration type of evolution. For individual family, you can define a certain time as a Yuga, and I will talk about that. And then the statecraft administration, which means how effective is the king, how effective is the prime minister, how effective is the president of a given kingdom, given country, given nation. And depending on that, the condition of the people, condition of the country can change, and that can be identified with certain Yuga. So again, think of this whole framework. We are looking at the timekeeping, but we are focusing on the psychology, physiology, emotional, behavioral aspect. Okay, and within that, we are looking for a local aspect. And what does that local or contextual means? That someone within, say, America, just for as an example, right now, somebody person who doesn't have a job, somebody is struggling with something, some family issues, and the person will feel so miserable. He would say, "Oh, this feels like Kali Yuga." Right at that time, someone who is doing well, financially doing well, health wise doing well, and things are going well for that person, the person may feel like, "Oh, I'm like a Satya Yuga." And that's what I mean by the local or contextual, and we will see examples of that. All right, so this is what we are going to focus, the bottom um, left hand corner. Okay, Aditya ji, before I
Before
get
you
into
do that,
illustrations, yeah, I was going to come back to you. Go ahead.
no, you said achar. It's achar, and
Achar, correct.
achar is a pickle.
Yes.
So we don't have to make a pickle of ourselves. We have to simplify everything.
Yeah, then that's why I said I should add one a there, like then it will automatically become achar. And that's where we get yeah, acharya, the word acharya. The acharya is someone who is not someone who just understands philosophy, but he or she practices himself or herself, right? Acharan, that there is a whole emphasis. In fact, I don't know if you noticed all these four definitions and the word that I have used for each of these in the sense of, let me just go 1 second. Yeah, so like vichar, achar, sanchar, prachar. So that's where I put those together and called it VASP PPTC matrix. The VASP is for that vichar, achar, sanchar, prachar, and PPTC is for philosophical, practical, theoretical, chronological, and of course the enchilada at the end of it, because people have made an enchilada out of it, really really it sort of feels messy, and if you have tried enchilada, it's tasty. So the challenge with that is, many people, even when they have this made this Yuga business into extremely messy business, somehow they are so engrossed into it, they are loving it, they don't want to get out of it and clean it up. That's why it's very difficult to pull them out of this issue. Okay, so anything else before I want to go into illustrations? Do you want
No,
to?
please go ahead.
No?
Yeah, please.
So on this bottom left hand corner, what we are looking at is a philosophical, psychological aspect, and the local or contextual. So we are going to look at 4 illustrations. When I was preparing for this, Aditya, it so happened, like, so many other illustrations were coming, so many things. And I said, somewhere I have to limit myself, because we are not going to go over 40, 50 minutes, no matter what. So do understand, those people who are watching, this is just a way of illustration. If you want to get deep into it, you can start reading Mahabharata. You can start reading Purana, and you'll be amazed how many different variations you see.
Correct.
In fact, Purana, I would say some of the narrations in Purana are responsible for this nightmare in some fashion. Huh? Now, that is not to blame the Puranas. Purana would have a very specific reason. Each Purana might have a specific reason why they selected that specific definition.
That's right.
But the problem is with the consumers of a Purana. Okay, instead of understanding, remember I gave you analogy of US gallon, UK gallon, and a standard gallon. It's a
Yes.
gallon, but someone has to understand they are not the same just because we are calling it gallon. Okay,
Yes.
it's the same thing with this. There was a Gimli glider. I don't know if you have heard this term. This is a place in up in Canada, in the province they call it there, right? Province of Manitoba. And this is the problem with the units. That is what has happened with the Yuga. So I'm just mentioning that, and that's not my illustration. one time a flight, I think it was a Air Canada flight, and this is going back many years, and it started from Montreal, and I think it was heading somewhere else. I forgot, maybe to Vancouver, Edmonton, yeah, Calgary, something. And those people will say how much, just like if you remember at an Indian gas station, like you go there and you, with a sign, you might tell the person who puts the petrol in your car, like how much petrol you want. He might say, you might say four fingers, like in the sense of 4 liters or 40 liters, whatever is appropriate. Something like that happened. So when the person who is putting fueling that aircraft, he said how much, these are old times, something of that effect, and there was a confusion in the communication. So for example, instead of a 4,000 liters, I'm just making it up, the person thought it is 400 liters or something like this. And because of that, what happened is, by the time they are only halfway through their journey, suddenly the petrol was gone. Okay, and it's called Gimli glider, because the pilot, you can check on the Wikipedia and whatnot. By the way, I used to go all the way to Gimli. That was my sales territory, on the lake. And so the pilot successfully, emergency, but successfully landed that flight with no fuel whatsoever, gliding it to Gimli airport, and that's why it's called Gimli glider. My point is, the confusion there was between somebody showing, say, four fingers, and now it's up to your thing. Someone say how much it cost you to buy a house, and somebody says this, huh? Now if somebody thinks it's a $4,000, then that is a problem, right? More than likely it's a $400,000, right? But somebody big house might be 4 million, and so I'm saying that's the confusion. Okay, let's go into the illustration, our first illustration. This is going back to Charaka Samhita. So we are looking at Ayurveda text. I will quickly skip through the Nagari script here, but the words, that just to show you, Yatha Kruta Yuga Mevam Balyam, Yatha Treta Tatha Yauvanam, Yatha Dwaparas Tatha Sthavirya, Yatha Kalirevam Aturya, Yatha Yugantaras Tatha Maranamiti. Okay, therefore I quoted this Dehinosmin Yatha Dehe from Bhagavad Gita. Quick translation, and we don't have to read the top portion of it. We'll just go to the bottom. I will highlight it. In the context of Ayurveda, this is from Charaka Samhita. It is saying the so let's see where we start. Okay, so implementation in the person. Kruta Yuga, childhood is like a Kruta Yuga, which is same as a Satya Yuga. Treta is like a youth. Dwapar is like a old age, or old age rather. Old age is like a Dwapar. Youth is like a Treta Yuga. And you can think of a illness as a Kali. And there are many other definitions, many other astronomical definitions, and we'll see if we get time when we get to the next two sections. And the end of creation, so death can be considered with the end of creation. So think of it, in this case, the whole creation was thought to be a time of 4 yugas. Okay, so there can be a many different definitions, but here it is the human life, the single human life is divided, and this is in a generic fashion, this is generalization, into 4 yugas. Okay, so this is a very real, practical, useful, meaningful, applied definition of a yuga, which people will understand has nothing to do directly with the time. Now in some sense the time is there, some sense time interval is there. For example, childhood, that is a time interval. Youth is a time interval. Old age is a time interval. And then illness is a time interval. But childhood, I mean, how do we define it? One person might say, well, until age 10. Other person might say until age 12. Another person might say until age 16. In which case, we are calling it a yuga, Kruta Yuga, childhood, but actually the duration would change. Ditto for youth, ditto for old age, and so on. I mean, we know, don't we have these terms like now we'll say the new 50s is like a old 40s, or our current 40s, new 40s is like a old 20s. It's like a 20s. We use that terms, right? Because with time, with nutrition, with good exercise, air, and whatnot, some of the things and our abilities are changing. So that is first illustration. Okay, again, we are talking very local. It applies to a specific individual, and we are talking of all the 4 yugas during individual person's lifetime. Again, it doesn't have a fixed bound, but it does have a directional bound. Okay, childhood, youth, old age, illness, and then death. Let's look at the illustration of the second illustration, again in the same categories. And Aditya ji can relate to this. In fact, it was him who suggested it, who pulled it. And thank you, Aditya ji, for doing it, because it just came back to me too. In fact, I tried to see how much I remember. Actually, I remember quite a lot. Now, many things have gone, but if you start saying it, I will able to follow it. Like, so Cheto Darpanamarjanam, so I
Correct.
remembered that. And then,
Mahadavani Nirvapanam.
and what is that other one? Like Shuni Chena, and
No,
something like that, right?
yeah, Shunyaitam, this is you have written here, but
Yeah,
the other
but there
one
is
is
another verse also, like the 8 verses. So I could
correct.
remember those verses, and I had those by heart, by the way. And
Cheto
if I
Darpan
spend like
Marjanam Bham Mahadavani Nirvapanam.
Nirapanam, yeah,
Yeah,
correct, very beautiful. And I mean, if I spend 20 minutes, I'll get those by heart again
yeah,
because
yeah.
they are there. I've just forgotten. So you mentioned this, and how beautiful, and thank you. Yugayitam nimeshena chakshusha pravrushayitam shunyayitam jagat sarvam govinda virahename.
Very name.
Something very interesting I want to show you. Again, we are discussing the left side of our framework, left side. But I will bring you for a second to the extreme right side for a minute. But what this verse is saying, again, the translation I found was in a Hindi. Why don't you translate, Aditya ji? And uh,
So
then I will.
here the like here which you already mentioned in Hindi also there. So here Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is saying that that the time period, like even for a Nimeshena, really is looking like a yuga to me. It is like a very
Hmm,
large period of time because
hmm,
for him, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that the whole world looks empty,
hmm.
as if in the separation from Govinda. The
Yeah.
one which you're saying was Trinadapi Suni Chena Taruriva
Hmm,
Saishuna.
hmm.
Amanina Manadina Kirtanya Sadahari.
Kirtanya Sadahari. Correct, correct, correct. Yeah.
So
Like, be like the grass which bends becomes a humble, right? And be tolerant like a tree, which goes through all of this. And just chant name of a Hari.
yeah.
Hmm?
In that situation, you can chant the name of Hari.
Correct,
In that
correct.
condition, state of mind.
In that
But
condition,
here
yeah.
the we
So,
use there Chaitanya Mahaprabhu talks about tolerating the elements of nature and
correct.
the sukh and dukh and also the
Yes.
but not tolerating other people because tolerate is
Ah,
a very negative word.
correct, correct, correct,
For
correct.
that he says
True.
amanina manadena, give all
Amanina
respect to
manadena.
others without
Correct.
expecting anything in return.
Right, right. Kirtaniya Sadahari.
In
And keep
that
on doing
state
the.
you can chant the
Hmm.
names of Hari.
Yeah.
Beautiful
So,
verse.
so yeah, beautiful. And I mean, all the 8 are so beautiful. So
Beautiful.
here, think of it, how this is even consistent with what Einstein's experiment was.
Correct.
Einstein was in the presence of a beautiful lady, and he felt 1 hour like a minute. Here, the experience of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and therefore he's also representing that Gopi Bhava, the experience is very consistent, only in the other direction, which is to say, when there is absence of Krishna, they are feeling a single nimesha like so much time.
Yuga.
Okay, because of the separation. Huh?
Correct.
So separation, it is like that, and there the timing is warping in the other direction when you are in the presence of Krishna. Like you might spend yoga many years and you feel like, oh, it was just a short period of time, just like Einstein felt,
Yes.
in that way. But something else, shunyayitam jagat sarvam. Okay, so the whole universe, they are feeling it like a nothing, huh? Almost like that singularity, the Big Bang singularity, almost like a nothing. So literally the warping of a space, but the warping of a time also. The first line is a warping of a time, and the third line is a warping of a space. It's just so how beautiful. Now this is definitely on the physiological side, but I wanted to bring it like how the seeds of scientific theories, scientific discoveries are there into a human experience. Okay, this is a very good example of that. So again, I want to say this one is a very local contextual experience of a specific individual. So Chaitanya
Correct.
Mahaprabhu, in this mood, he was feeling this, but a person outside might have said, what are you talking, you are
Yeah.
sitting there chanting this for 3 hours. I was counting on my wristwatch. The person will say, because that person's experience is different. So it's very local, it's a very contextual, it's very specific to that individual. Okay, that's the second
Because
example.
he's not
Very
experiencing the inner bhav of Chaitanya
correct.
Mahaprabhu.
Exactly. That's why I said it's a psychological, it's a it's a physiological in nature. Okay, it's not for the other person.
Yeah.
Yeah, very good. Beautiful example. Okay, let's go to the our third illustration. Now, this one I have collected many. For example, you will hear the word Mahabharata Yuga, like Mahabharata as a one Yuga time, right? Yuga Sandhya, they will call it. Therefore, that Mahabharata was at the intersection of the Dwapara and um, Kali and whatnot. But Ramayana is also Yuga, which is essentially these are some special epochs, special epochs. Like we can call in the Indian, sorry, in the US, I don't want to say politics, in US administration, we will talk about the Kennedy Yuga, John F.
Yeah.
Kennedy, the Kennedy Yuga, like those golden times that many people still remember and really talk about, oh, what were those times and so on and so forth. Just like I said, the World War II Yuga times, it was slightly different. Same it's with the World War One. Same thing you can talk about the Great Depression, late 1920s, right? It's a Yuga, Depression Yuga, Great Depression Yuga. So
So
something that
generally,
happened.
generally
Go
they
ahead.
use a thing like Ramayana Kal,
There
Mahabharata
you
Kal,
go. Yeah.
again that related to time. But one thing I have a question usually is
Hmm.
when they say in the Vedic Kal, you know, according
Yeah.
to Vedic Kal, even going on now because Kali Yuga is going on.
Good point. Good point. Yes, Vedic Kal, absolutely. And so people say, oh, during the Vedic, when did the Vedic time ended? I said, what do you mean? Right? Yeah. But sometime what they are referring to in the sense, maybe the development of a Veda, even that is a problematic,
That's a
because
problematic.
Veda is a knowledge and knowledge is always growing. And we talked
Smriti
about
is
that.
even relevant today. Smriti is still going on.
Correct. And Shruti, Smriti, Puran, Adi, everything is there. In fact, they are designed in such a way that they are applicable. Okay.
Yes.
We have to use our intellect to see why they are applicable and in what way they are applicable to our times. Okay.
And that
Yeah.
we use
So,
in any case, like some modern thinker put something
yeah.
and then we start saying maybe that way. We try to apply it. So why
Hmm.
reject this Vedic science which is mentioned?
Right. 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 Yeah, so that therefore those terminologies are not actually correct, but the impact of these Western Indology models is so high.
Very
I mean, ridiculous models, right?
ridiculous.
In fact, in my public lectures, I tend to emphasize this to folks, academia or otherwise, folks working in humanities. I said, guys, when you refer to essays, Charaka Samhita, Sushruta Samhita, some Brahmana text, and the Brahmana is not to be confused with the Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. That's what many people think. When I will say Brahmana text like Shatapat Brahman, they say, okay, well, never heard this before. What caste is that? Well, this is not. There are no caste in India. Casta
Yeah.
is a Portuguese word. But
Portuguese
anyways,
word.
right? So there is Samvita, and so if you don't know the specific time of that, don't state it. He
Correct.
says, I don't know, but let me. I'm today going to talk about Shatapat Brahman. Why very lazily and in a confusing fashion and confusing others, take a date from the Western Indology nonsense that they have done over last 250 years. But those dates are embedded in our thing. So just now the conference that was ended, or many conferences, people will say, yeah, this particular text from 200 BC. And if I'm into the audience and if there is a question answer, I always ask, like, okay, how did you arrive at 200 BC? And they say, oh, what do you mean? It is there in the text, no? So if it is somewhere, then I tell them, if it's somewhere written, then does that become a truth?
Yeah.
Well,
Where
that's
is the
what
Purva
Wikipedia.
Paksha for that? Where is the
Correct. How did somebody arrive at 200? Like Wikipedia is example of that, especially when it comes to Hindu history.
Hindu
I
history?
mean, they will make a mockery of it. What a very sad thing. So yeah, if you don't know, you say I don't know. I have read somewhere in 200 BC, but I don't know the basis of it. At least say that. So that's what I keep on saying. Like Arundhati Yuga. So actually, epoch of Arundhati. That's what I call. That's my research there, where I showed that particular observation of Mahabharata said by Vyasa is only possible between these two dates, right? So no other time. If you go in the past, the only time Arundhati is walking ahead of Vasishta is during this time. That's a Arundhati Yuga. In fact, I wrote it down, Epoch of Arundhati, but somebody was asking me when I was writing an article in Marathi. He says, how would you translate that? I said Arundhati Yuga, and this is nothing. This is like few years ago. Then Krishna, take Bhagwan Krishna for example, we call him Yuga Purush. We say that to the Ram also, right? Yuga Purush. What is that? What Yuga? Which Yuga are we talking? Yesterday, I had a conversation with a young researcher, and that we just talked offline, and I'll connect you guys. When we are talking, you'll see some Puranas referring to Krishna's time as the time of Kali Yuga. Okay, there are some Puranas who will refer to that, and all kinds of variations are possible. My point is, Krishna as a Yuga Purush has nothing to do with when Krishna was there. Krishna is always there in a way. So when Krishna is there is not an issue. Krishna is a Yuga Purush because he brought a totally different mindset, a revolution. He brought a social revolution. He brought a cultural revolution. That's why he's a Yuga Purush. Take Mahatma Gandhi. Okay, Mahatma Gandhi. So that time is very certain phase in the Indian civilization, or not even civilization, last 100 years. There was a time when everyone was doing doing the, what you call, the cloth, making his own thread and cloth, and doing, weaving that, all things, cleaning his own thing, not asking anybody else to do, won't take any help. This was a certain type of acharan that he tried to bring among the ashrama mates, of his thing. We can call that Gandhi Yuga. To the outsiders, it may not be Gandhi Yuga, but the people who were following his advice and trying to live like that, it was a Gandhi Yuga. Take Shivaji, Shivaji fighting against the Islamic invasion, Islamic oppression. And so, like somewhere around 1650, when he started going all the way to 1880s, right? We can call that Maratha Samrajya Yuga. So the Yuga is used in a different way. Something interesting, the last one on in this illustration number 3. I was studying first chapter of Bhagavad Gita for some talk I have to do next week, actually Monday, this coming Monday, on the first 5 chapters. So I was just refreshing myself, what some new insights that I would rather want to share, rather than everything that people already know. And just as a matter of fact, when he talks about, right in the first adhyay, he talks about, Arjun tells Krishna how, right on the battlefield, he's seeing his fathers, like a father figures, uncles and whatnot, then the grandfather, like Pitama, like Vishmacharya and many others. And then his generation, Arjuna's generation, is also there in the fighting, but also he's seeing his sons and his grandsons, like Krishna's grandsons are also there, I mean, so 5 generations. And so that word came, and I was just curious, what is the word for generation in Sanskrit? Okay, because that word was not there in Sanskrit, Bhagavad Gita. It
PD.
was just, huh?
PD.
PD is Marathi, for example, right?
Marathi.
PD is a
Yes.
Marathi. So
Yes.
yeah, PD, and then I asked somebody what was the Kannada word, but I said, okay, let's see. So I went to Sanskrit English dictionary. In fact, Sanskrit, I have few dictionaries, and what I found was the generation. When I typed generation and asked for a Sanskrit word, it gave the word Yuga.
Yoga.
Not only that, it gave me multiple words. It gave 3 Yuga, and then it says 3 generations. Pancha Yugam, and said 5 generations. So
Vansh
the
also.
reason,
Vanshavali also they use.
Vanshavali also. So the reason I'm bringing this is to understand that Yuga is a powerful concept. Yuga is a useful concept, but just like an aeroplane is extremely useful to go fast from one place to another, but in the hands of a monkey, it can be an extremely dangerous tool. Okay, so with
And
so
many other
many,
people also. Many other people also
yeah,
who know how to fly but not know how to land.
correct. There you go. Well, now that you digress, I'm going to take you on a digression on the Google Earth. If you have done it, see, I like some of this aspect. And aeroplane is always, I mean, flying is always at my heart. I never took lessons, or never could afford to take lessons, or time and money and place and circumstances. But you know what happened when the Google Earth came in? And I don't know if you have tried that. There was a simulation in the Google Earth. You can
Yeah.
fly a plane.
Yeah.
And when I was supporting the sales region in my corporate job, a Western region, there were many of my sales, not many, few of my sales managers were pilots, and I have flown with them. But what is interesting is, so I was telling them this my simulation experience in Google Earth, and I said, you know what? So one time I just discussed my frustration with one sales manager who is a pilot. I said, I can take it up fine. Take up I can fine, and I can fly fine. The problem is landing, because when I used to come to land in the Google Earth and that thing, my flight will go ahead and the running strip is gone, and there is nothing to land. And one, he just listened to me, and just coolly said, he said, any fool can take the flight up. It takes the intelligence to land it.
Today, also in the internet world, to bring people to common sense is very difficult.
Mhm. Very difficult, very
To
difficult.
take it away from common sense is very easy. Just
Yeah.
watch some movie and you're up.
Correct, correct. And so remember, today I did not show at the beginning that three axes of Shraddha, Samshaya, and Jidnyasa. But again, brings back to that. And I have almost made a mental note. No matter where I'm giving a presentation, I'm going to show that slide. Because to instill, or at least making a best attempt to instill the common sense before I share what I want to share. Because the problem is, when people should have a trust in what somebody is saying, they show mistrust. And when they should not trust, they show trust. This is for a specific thing, this is for a specific person. Like some people, they should not show trust, they show the trust. Some people, they should show trust, they don't show trust. I mean, it has become a very psychological mess, for whatever reasons, science, technology, whatever that is. But anyways, okay, so this is the third kind of illustration, that Yuga. Again, each of this is a local. For example, like a pidi or a generation. See, what your five generations in your family would not exactly match with five generations in my family. That's why I call it local. That's why I call it contextual. Okay, so Maratha Samrajya we talked about as a certain time that happened to be from 1650 approximately to 1818. If we look at some another Samrajya like a Maurya Samrajya or Gupta Samrajya, the time period would be different, of course, but the duration also would be different. It's just given. Okay, and a Krishna as a Yuga Purush or a Krishna Yuga and a Gandhi Yuga, they're not to be compared in any fashion. They are some very unique events in our civilization, in the humanity. That's why they are called Yuga. They are not to be confused. Same thing with Ramayana, same thing with the Mahabharata. In fact, when I gave my first talk in Delhi in 2016, there was a professor, Rajendra Gupta. He's a biologist, and he was in the audience. And I don't remember the author's name, some Acharya, something he said. And he had defined this in that sense. So he said, our current thing is like a Kali Yuga. And then going backward, the next big epoch that comes is a Mahabharata. So that's why it was placed as a Dwapar. Then if you go back further, another big event one can think of is a Ramayana, and therefore that was called Treta. So that was that Acharya, whoever that researcher was, his way of looking at it. And he was saying why they might be called Dwapar and Treta and so on. My point is, there is a plurality when it comes to Yuga. It is absolutely idiotic to dogmatically stick to one particular definition and try to see why it doesn't make sense. In fact, one can be assured that it will not make sense. And quickly, the last illustration. Now, what happens is, uh,
Before you
yeah,
start there,
go ahead.
Sat, Tret, Dwapar, Satyug, Treta Yug, Dwapar. Satyug is all qualities present.
Hmm.
Treta means three prominent.
Yes.
Dwapar means two prominent.
Yeah.
Kali Yuga, nothing prominent.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. True. True. True.
It's 4, 3, 2, 1.
4, 3, 2, 1. There you go. There you go. And that's even from that. In fact, when people saying four legs and then three legs and two legs and one leg, that is actually true from the perspective, but also metaphorically also is very easy to explain
Very
one,
easy
two, three,
explain.
four, right?
Correct.
And these numbers originally come from the game of a Dyuta
Yes.
that Yudhishthira and that played, something like this. Okay, so before describing this last one, what this is describing, everyone knows this book. If you are outside India, you know my first book, When Did the Mahabharata War Happen? The Mystery of Arundhati. In India, it's the same title, looks like a different cover, and it is a different cover. Inside content is the same. I'm going to quickly read something from the ninth chapter, Conflicting Observations. And there are Mahabharata text itself has multiple theories of a yuga, like 5 or 6. I'm going to read one. And I call this just for I have to name it in some fashion, just like I named the framework. I call it Yuga theory of Bhishma. And this comes in the Bhishma Shanti Parva and whatnot. Where here Bhishma is saying, Bhishma defines the theory of Chatur Yuga in terms of qualities, actions, and characteristics of the ruling king. Bhishma describes the actions of the king responsible for bringing Krita, Treta, Dwapar, and Kali or Kali Yuga, and describes rewards king receives depending on the Yuga king creates with his actions. And then Bhishma states that the king is wholly responsible for the precipitation of a specific yuga. Now, again, there are 4 or 5 other definitions in the Mahabharata text for the yuga. I'm not going to read them. In fact, the people who are curious, they can watch my YouTube interview that should come out soon with this Jivan Rao, or when the Jivan Rao comes on Sattology, then you can listen to that interview. Very beautiful. He has done a wonderful Purva Paksha. But let me bring it to here. So in Mahabharata, you will hear this term multiple times. Raja Kalasya Karanam. Raja Kalasya Karanam. A king is responsible for precipitating a certain type of yuga. That has nothing to do with other definitions of a yuga. And so here is a Bhishma of now finally lying on the bed. He's there for 92 plus days, waiting for the day of winter solstice when he passed away. Okay. And that also takes us to the 6th millennium BC, that evidence. But here, what I want to show you is this. This is from the Adi Parva. Okay, when the Chitravirya and Vichitravirya, okay, they are there, they are gone, and now the 3 brothers, which is Dhritarashtra, Pandu, and Vidur, they are born. They are still very young. Trishu Kumareshu. Okay, they are still young, and it is Bhishma who is essentially as a caretaker ruling the kingdom. And the description comes like how his rule was such a altruistic rule that everything was so comfortable. There was a prosperity, there were no quarrels, there were no disease, and so on. The land was very fertile, and there is a description of that. But if you focus again, those people who can read Nagri, if not, I'm going to read it anyways. Okay, then he says Nabha Vandasyava Kechinna Dharma Ruchayo Jana and Pradesheshwapi Rashtranam Krutam Yugam Avartata. So his administration, Bhishma's administration was such that the Kruta Yuga arrived in his kingdom. Kruta Yuga
Avartata.
arrived. Okay.
Avartata means avatar.
Avatar,
Yuga,
there
like a
you go.
descendant.
Thank you. Right, arrived. Kruta Yuga arrived in his kingdom. Now this is beautiful. Now we are talking of the Mahabharata time in a different, using a different definition as the interface of Dwapara, or at the end of Dwapara, interface of Dwapara and Kali. But here it is saying Bhishma, which is right there during that time, brought Kruta Yuga. Now, is this one isolated reference from Mahabharata? The answer is no. I'm going to quickly give you a couple others and just stop. Right in the same Mahabharata, you can find that similar description comes to Parshuram. When Parshuram got rid of miscreants 21 times, okay, and then Adityaji, you have described those 2 types of Kshatriyas and how they were thrown out in different directions. I think you have described even one Kshatriya going in east direction, another in the west, and so on and so forth. But you have done that on, when we talked together.
Yeah, Beam went to the east, Nakul went to the west, Arjun went to
Right.
the north.
Right.
Then
No, but no, Parshurama. No, I'm not talking of that. You haven't
Parshuram,
you
yeah.
described Parshurama's also like certain
Yes,
2 types of Kshatriyas and how
correct,
they
correct.
were. Yeah. So
Yes.
even there, and that comes in a Mahabharata, it is said that when Parshurama got rid of the miscreants 21 times, he brought Kruta Yuga. That is the description. And we can see those descriptions multiple times with multiple other good virtuous kings and during their administration. I'll just mention the quick last one. In Valmiki Ramayana context, Rama, after he comes back from Ayodhya, and then the Rama Rajya began in the truest sense, because now he was coronated and so on and so forth. And again, we find that description. Now, Rama's time we consider as a Treta Yuga by some other definition. But it says Rama Rajya was such that Rama brought Kruta
Satya,
Yuga, or
Kriti.
Rama brought Satya Yuga. So we covered here 4 illustrations. In fact, in the third illustrations, we covered actually 4 or 5 different kinds. And honestly, there are many others that will fit into this bottom left-hand corner. But again, our idea is to give people a flavor, and hopefully people understand that this is guys scratching the surface. If they want to know more, instead of like thinking of themselves as experts in yoga, they should take to tapasya, they should take to swadhyaya, they should take to abhyasa, rather than acting like experts and giving gyan, in at an immature state to people. So this is to encourage people to truly take to abhyasa, truly take to study, and know more about the yoga. So
Even if a
out of the
modern,
4, we covered 2 today. I mean, we covered now the one of the 4, so we covered 2. Go ahead.
So even if you're a modern politician,
Hmm.
your slide is finished now. Is it?
Yeah, my slide. Yeah, my slide should be done. Yeah, and these are my books. And if
Yes.
you want to know about it, right now we are these all three books are useful. But definitely, if you want to understand the five or six different theories of Yuga from the Mahabharata text, the middle book is the one that you want to pick up. And chapter 9, conflicting observation. That's where the summary comes. Yeah, so I'm done with this,
And these
and I
books
can
are
stop
available
sharing.
on Amazon too.
Yes, so these books, the way they look in this cover, this is how the book will look if you are ordering in India through Subbu Publications. You can order online, you can order the combo package, all three of them. And if you are outside India, then this is how the books would appear: the historic Rama, the When Did the Mahabharata War Happen, Bhishma Nirvana on Amazon. So this is my last slide. I'll stop sharing.
So in the you just said the qualities
Hmm,
define a yuga also.
hmm.
So that's why they got the Krita Yuga in Dwapar, Krita
Yes,
Yuga in Treta Yuga.
correct.
So because Krita Yuga is considered ideal,
Hmm.
nobody has any disease, everyone is happy, everyone is
Yes,
doing very well.
yeah.
Now, even a modern politician can bring that. So that will be called his yoga. Where,
Absolutely, absolutely. See, and again, a good one that you brought up. So take Modi ji now, and doing this 401. That doesn't mean everything is hunky dory.
yes,
That's not the idea. Like we talk of John F. Kennedy's time, and people. I mean, I wasn't there, but people talk of what a glorious time it was and whatnot. That's not to say everything was hunky dory, but directionally, many things were happening in the right direction, which we can definitely say about India and with Modi ji, right? So it will be called a Modi Yuga, and it will say Modi ji tried to bring Kruta Yuga in the Kali Yuga, something like that. Say, think of Ayurveda. If somebody's health is down, then that person is essentially diseased. That is a Kali. But a person can take proper dinacharya, person can take to proper exercise, Surya Namaskar, and good nutrition, chanting and doing meditation, and can bring himself. That's why it's a local and contextual. While everyone else may be suffering, but that individual can bring himself to Kruta Yuga.
hmm,
Okay, so that brings the role of a like a, what you call the free will versus destiny. Like that's why when people ask, so sir, when is the Kali Yuga coming to an end? Hoping that now they will be in Satya Yuga. That is a very, I understand their frustration, but that is a question out of ignorance, not understanding. Because you can create a Satya Yuga for yourself. It is possible. And if people listen to you, assuming you are capable of doing that, then the other people can reach that too.
yeah. So the yoga you brought very good point that it's the qualitative definition based on the quality of the person, and also and the other factors are dependent on it. Like if you maintain your health or
Hmm.
you maintain your body,
Yeah,
then you will be in the healthiest state of existence, internally
correct,
happy.
correct.
Now that is a qualitative aspect of the yoga, and that's how the yugas are defined.
Correct, correct. And we will get to chronological, which is
Yes.
most people tend to show only familiarity with that chronological aspect. We are going to get there. That is not to be discounted. In fact, my whole research is about chronology. You know, I consider that very important. And what you'll find funny is those people who will have a tough time understanding this physiological, psychological, and philosophical aspect of yoga. When we get to chronology, they will say, "Arey bhai, chronology kyun chahiye? Why do we need chronology?" That is a tamas of a highest kind, like people not understanding the strategic significance.
and,
And
and, and eventually long term, we can establish the missing years. There's nothing missing
yes.
years. Humanity has consistently lived.
Mhm.
There are no missing years because Kal cannot be missing. You may not know
Correct.
about it, but it's not missing.
That is correct. That is correct. Yes, yes. Just see, it's like this. Just because in some small village, like a person lived a very happy life. Just on that, I will tell you something. Like when we think of great acharyas, we talk of Ram. I mean, all the names Shankaracharya. Just I'm taking up some names: Ramanujacharya, Madhvacharya, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Sant Tukaram, Dhaneshwar, Namdev, Guru Nanak. We take all these names. One time a question was asked by somebody to Vinoba Bhave, and says, Vinoba ji, according to you, who are some of the great acharyas, the greatest acharya, who you think as the greatest acharya? And Vinoba was a very, great mind, mathematician, very subtle thinking. He said, I don't, there was a great acharya, but I don't know his name, the greatest acharya. Because somebody as great as Acharya, if he doesn't take to Loka Sangraha, okay, and many people don't want to, they do it because they see the value of it. Somehow they do it. The person who has not taken to Loka Sangraha, and if he has not written, like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wrote supposedly only these 8 lines,
Eight.
a Shikshashtak.
Correct.
Otherwise, people don't know. I mean, the Shad Goswamis wrote a lot about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's philosophy, but Chaitanya himself just these 8 verses,
Yeah.
as far as the documented, what he did. So you will not able to always judge the person's greatness by what they have written or what they have not written. What if somebody did not write anything? There is nothing.
Correct. And many acharyas may not have written it, but
Correct.
their lifestyle
Mhm.
presented them as such. Because
Yes.
sometimes some acharyas may not want to talk about themselves more, like Madhavendra Puri. They don't
Yeah.
want to talk themselves more.
Correct. Or the guru of who is the Vaishno, the Sampradaya, like Vishishta Advaita, like Ramanujacharya, guru of
Ramanchar,
Ramanujacharya, Yamuna Muni, Yamunacharya.
Yamunacharya.
Yeah, he wrote only 32 verses.
That's
I
it.
mean, you go and ask people who is the guru of Ramanujacharya. Many people will not able to answer that question.
No.
Everyone knows Ramanujacharya, and in some sense, it's very apt, right? The Yamunacharya produced a disciple who did such a great work that people forgot his guru's name.
Correct. So I think it's a very well established, like the purpose of yoga and
Hmm.
why the yoga, because you can take your mind to an ideal time frame
Hmm.
only when you have the qualities established. Otherwise there's no ideality to that any yoga. It's a time
Correct.
is time is what you do in that time is what
Yes.
matters.
Correct. Correct.
So great show, and great thank you all for watching and staying for almost 1 hour with us.
Yes.
And for viewers, do go to YouTube and subscribe. Those of you who are live, again, you can go back and see it and take notes. A lot of important information here. So thank you so much for your time. Namaskar, and I'll see you again later in another show.
Thank you.